Good morning, y'all. Wait, I keep on saying good morning, but it's not actually morning. It's like closer to afternoon. But hey, how y'all doing? I hope you guys are enjoying your morning slash afternoon. Today we're gonna have on a very special guest that I'm very excited to have on live today. She's currently the VP of Operations for the New Orleans Pelicans, Swin Cash, and has been an outspoken advocate for pay equality in professional basketball, in addition to being like an incredible player herself. So I'm excited to be able to hear from her. Looking for her on here right now so I can link her in. But I'm so excited to see that there are so many of you. Good, happy to see you guys too. Hey Solange, hey Julian, good morning. Let me check on here again. All right, so while we're waiting for her to join, hola again. Somebody asked me the other day, oh good, Axion Star, says Swin Cash legend. Yes, and that's who we've got on today. Very excited about that. Somebody asked me the other day if I spoke Spanish, and I was like, I mean, I can say hello and I'm hungry, and that's about it. On here, I just sent in a little request. We're just going to wait for her to join before we get started. Good morning.
Hi.
How you doing?
I'm good. I'm team natural today, so I'm feeling really good. Honored to be here.
We're matching. I love it. It's perfection. I was telling everybody about you, although obviously there are tons of people on here who are so excited to have you join us. But I was looking on your bio. I did not know that you were one of only 6 women, is this right, to get an Olympic gold medal, win an NCAA championship, a WNBA championship, and a FIBA championship. Did I get that right?
I believe so. The last time I checked, there may have been 1 or 2 that just got added after the last Olympics, but it's a pretty small group, and I'm happy and honored to be a part of it.
Yeah, a small elite group. I mean, much respect. I mean, I was an athlete in college, but that was as far as I went. And even then, like, no NCAA championships. So very excited to have you. All right, so I was telling everybody, you know, that obviously you're currently the VP of Operations for the New Orleans Pelicans, which is very exciting. But everything's sort of shut down right now, which, you know, I know there are tons of basketball fans that wish we could still watch sports, wish things were still going on. How have you and your family been dealing with the shutdown?
We've been managing. I have a 2.5-year-old son, so I'm like a lot of moms where you're balancing having to work, doing Zoom calls at the same time, trying to teach him, keep him on a routine, and just taking moments for myself to be kind and be like, look, you're not going to have it all together, but we're managing and we're getting through and we're staying home and staying safe like I hope everybody else out there is doing.
Good. Have you had any Zoom calls where like your kids end up interrupting?
Oh, yeah. I mean, I've had 2 Zoom calls where I had to take my picture down because my son decided to go and do number 2 in his pants instead of the pot. So I'm like with the computer in one hand and putting him in the tub with the other hand. And then when I need to ask a question, I pop on like, hey, guys, and pop back off. So look, at the end of the day, it is what it is. Like, we're having to make do with what we can.
Yeah. Well, it's so funny seeing like sort of the behind the scenes and what's happening while everybody's staying at home. Like I think I saw some news report where there was like a meteorologist who was getting interrupted by 2 of his kids. He's like holding one and one's down like at the bottom of the screen screaming. And I think that's like the funniest part of things.
Right. It makes for great memes too. So.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. I hope that that's how we remember the shutdown.
Yeah.
It's just the crazy Zoom calls that we all had to be on all the time.
Right.
So, you know, obviously there are a lot of, like I said, you know, sports are kind of shut down right now. How have the players on the Pelicans been responding and reacting to everything?
I've been really, really proud of our guys. Right from the start, they were trying to figure out, you know what, we know basketball shut down, but what can we do for the community? A lot of our guys have been here in New Orleans, partnering with some of the local organizations, providing meals, providing things for our frontliners at Ochsner Hospital, which is one of our team sponsors. And I mean, they've been doing just an excellent job. And also a lot of them have been going back to their hometowns. A lot of times people just think of the players helping the city that they're in, but a lot of our guys have been doing stuff back in their hometowns as well.
Oh, that's exciting. Well, and I think there are so many people who look to them as role models, and I'm so glad to hear that they really are taking that seriously and being leaders in their communities, not even just in New Orleans, but in their own hometowns too. That's really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the NBA as a whole has done a phenomenal job. A lot of you out there probably have seen NBA Together, which the NBA launched immediately. And I think Adam Silver has been on the front lines as far as from a sports standpoint, leading the charge of saying, this is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to be in the community. We launched different platforms for the communities to engage and understand, like, where are the resources at. I think that's the biggest thing, especially for the communities of color, where we don't know where resources are at. We don't know where we can get certain loans at. And I think the NBA has done a great job of partnering with organizations that are providing those resources to our communities.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which I love to hear.
Yeah.
And so what has your experience as VP of operations been like while you've been with the Pelicans? I mean, I know that there are times where, like in the legal industry, there are times when I'm the only woman in a room, I'm the only person of color in a room. And I always wondered if, as an executive, there are times where you deal with the same issue.
Well, the great thing about kind of coming here to New Orleans is my boss, David Griffin, from the start, really just said, we're going to build this thing with diversity. We want to make sure we have inclusion. We want to have people at the table. So although I am out of the league, one of the women that are VP in an executive position, we have other women that work within our basketball ops organization. I can say this, that there are a lot of times, like right now we're doing draft calls and a lot of things to prepare for the draft whenever that happens for the NBA, which I am the only woman. And instead of being intimidated by that, I feel that there's a need to hear my voice. And so I try not to shrink, but to make sure that if I have a thought, to put it out there. We're not always going to agree, but diversity of thought is what we need in every room, because that adds to the bottom line of business. You want to have successful business, you need women, you need diversity at the table.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I love to hear that. Especially, I think that's an excellent way for people to view that like, it's not that you should be shut out of conversations. It's that you really are an asset. And it's so true that they really do need your voice and your perspective. One of the things I liked to see in the NFL was more teams targeting women and saying, like, okay, it's not just guys that like going to football games. Women like attending football games too. Women enjoy sporting events, and we need to make sure that we have those voices in the mix so that we know how to market to women and can actually serve people who are our customers.
Absolutely. I absolutely agree. And I think good business is diversity, period. And the data shows that. You can run the numbers. And if you don't want to have good business, keep doing it the old way and you'll be stuck in the past and everybody's moving to the future.
Exactly. Well, I know you talk about some of these topics on your podcast, She's Got Time, which I love. You were talking about, I love that you switched between so many different topics, like community development and how you can help people, to like wine tasting and what you're doing during the coronavirus. Like, what got you started? What inspired your podcast?
Well, it really just inspired because I was working in media before I took on this position with the Pelicans. And I always had people sending in questions and emails. And I was like, you know what? I just want a platform that I can control, that I can talk about the issues that I want to talk about and not feel like it has to be pushed by certain sponsors. Like I have to do it this way or that way. I just wanted a very authentic grassroots feel and not care about how many likes it's getting, what's this doing, where is it at, where's the position? And it just felt really, really good to do it. It was, to tell you the truth, it was more like therapy for me because I had this outlet. And so now every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Central Time, I jump on IG Live. I have random conversations, bringing random people and just give a platform to people to say, how are we making it through right now? Because we all got time right now, literally.
Yeah, exactly. What's been like your favorite podcast session that you've had so far, or one that like stands out in your mind?
Yeah, there's been so many. I think for me, it's not so much the guests and the people that come on, it's the fan interaction. Because sometimes when I go live with somebody, I'll just randomly pick people off of IG and they just go crazy. They're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know you were going to pick me. I'm in the dark. What's happening? And that's like my favorite moments. And I'm like, why not you? Why wouldn't I pick you? I'm going through right now. So I love that kind of authentic connection.
Yeah. Well, and the Wise CEO on here says that you just wrote a post about owning your voice and she loves this. So that is really cool. What was the podcast about, owning your voice?
Yeah. One of the things is like a lot of times people don't realize like that we all have platforms and we all can like really own our voice in our moment. Sometimes people are like, I only have 36 followers. So what? That means you have a platform to connect with other people. Own that. Speak to people. Speak your truth and be in that space. And so I think for me, and shout out to Wise, a phenomenal group and organization, but I think it's just important for us to stand on our truth, our our purpose and be authentic. That's the biggest thing. Be authentic to your voice, authentic to who you are.
Absolutely. And I agree. What's funny is when I was competing to be Miss USA, in my interview, they asked me about authenticity. They were like, how important do you think authenticity is? And so I went on this like long spiel about like authenticity because I do think it's important. But I thought that like whatever I said just came off the wrong way. And I seriously thought I blew my interview.
No,
like I remember walking out and calling my mom, just like sobbing, crying, because I was like, I don't think that they understood me. I think I said something about, I remembered that when I was in law school, I would just join random organizations just because I thought they sounded good or that's what people would expect from me. And I ended up being involved in organizations that I just wasn't passionate about. And so I remember when I left, I got involved with Dress for Success because it really was something that I loved to do. And so I gave that example and said, you know, and authenticity is so important because you don't want to end up going to events and just not caring about being there. And so I remember leaving and thinking, did I just tell them that I'm going to go to events and I'm not going to care about about the different organizations unless I really love them? And I was just like, oh my God, I just blew it. It's terrible.
Yeah, no, but you know what? That is a great point right now. I know this interview is you're asking me questions, but I just want to really ask you something right now.
Yeah.
When you left out of that interview, did you feel that you told them exactly how you felt? Right?
I did. Yeah, I did. I just felt like maybe they could have misunderstood what I was saying. Because I didn't want to tell them like, I'm going to go and I'm not going to care. But I did want to tell them like, look, I want to be involved in organizations that I'm passionate about. And that's why I'm involved with Dress for Success. So to that end, yeah, I did tell them. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I tell people all the time is when you walk away and you said something that you feel was right, that was authentic and true to who you are, like you can be okay with that. You could have slept at night and been like, I'm okay with what I said.
Yeah.
But we as women, and especially I think as women of color, a lot of times in our heads, we're like, did they understand what I was saying? And so a lot of times when you're in meetings, at times you can feel like, you know what, do I have to say this a certain way so that they understand it? So I think as we continue to work and grow with each other, we just have to be like, you know what, we said it, we stand firm on who we are, and look where you are today, Miss USA.
Well, and I think the same with you. I mean, obviously you've been authentic to who you are, and you've spoken out about issues that were important to you, even when I think there were a lot of people who could have been afraid of doing that. So like when you were, you know, speaking out about pay equality in professional sports, like were you ever worried about what the effect would be and if it would negatively affect you down the road?
I wasn't afraid of it affecting me. I was afraid of not speaking because I felt like I knew at the end of the day, a lot of things may not change for myself, but I knew I wanted to have kids. And I looked at my younger niece and I was like, I want to make the world better for her. So if you're doing something that's selfless, you feel like you're doing the right thing. Like I benefited from women who did things before I was even here or even born at times. And so I think we have to always do things and advocate with that kind of in mind, that we're advocating not for ourselves, but also for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And, you know, I think that's something that, like, I know we've been talking about before we jumped on about the Last Dance documentary. And, you know, they talked a lot about, you know, activism, choices, deciding to speak out about issues or not to. What do you think about the current environment that we're in and athletes feeling empowered to speak out about issues that they think are important?
I think we've come a really, really long way. I mean, if you've been watching The Last Dance, I think one of the things we saw was how Michael Jordan alone started creating kind of this brand awareness, this brand affinity with a lot of major companies. And so he was that guy. He was the McDonald's guy. He was the Coke. He was all these different brand guys. And so back then, I'm pretty sure there was a lot of insecurity about if I say something that's not in line with mainstream, what does this do for what I have? Whereas now I think athletes and what the NBA has really done, along with in partnership with the union, I think is made it okay for the athletes to have a platform, NBA and WNBA, to be authentic, because the consumer, which is the fans, they identify with that. People want to know you care about them. They don't only want to know what you're drinking and what you're wearing. They want to know you care about the causes that they're important to them. And I think the NBA now is leading in that space, and the WNBA as well.
Yeah. Well, and I love to see that because I remember, aside from The Last Dance, which I have been enjoying, it's an incredible documentary to watch, especially because I haven't watched a lot of like Jordan's years of basketball. I don't know a lot that went on aside from him winning so many championships, but it was really, really cool to see a lot of that. But I remember visiting, I think it was the National African American History Museum in DC. And I remember seeing the podium from the Olympics years ago where the athletes wore the black gloves and put their fists up in the air. And one of those athletes, or maybe it was both of them, never ran in the Olympics after that because everybody was like, this isn't the time to be an activist. Like, you cannot do that here. And so they suffered these very severe repercussions because of just speaking out. So I love that we've sort of started cultivating an environment that's more welcoming to people speaking out and being able to be, you know, activists without fearing that, like, I'm going to be shut out of my sport if I speak out about an issue that is so important to speak out about.
Right. And I think the one thing that people need to understand that a lot of athletes have to juggle is that when an athlete says, you know, Black Lives Matter, the athlete says, this is important to me, they're not saying that everybody else doesn't matter. What they're saying is that there needs to be equal treatment for everybody. And I think that's one of the things that when I was playing that I kept having to articulate to people is that because somebody says that, listen, communities of colors, minorities are not being treated fairly, they're not policed fairly, they're not getting the proper resources, it doesn't mean that white communities don't matter. It just means that there needs to be equality across the board because we live in a democracy and you want to see that happen. So that's why you have advocates in the first place. So I tell people all the time, do your research, do your homework to understand why people are talking instead of just running outside and saying, you know, Colin Kaepernick is the worst ever.
Exactly.
Well, you need to understand and do a little bit more research. So that's what I try to tell people all the time.
Yes, it really is so important. I think people just trying to understand other people without, like, I tell people all the time, like, if you're talking to somebody or you're having an argument, like, listen with the intent to understand, not just with the intent of responding, because there's so many people that just want to be heard. But if we're all just speaking, nobody actually is going to reach a level of understanding that is important. So yeah, I couldn't agree more. Now you're doing more in our communities than just speaking out. I mean, you started this incredible foundation, Cash for Kids. Can you talk about why you started the foundation and some of how it's developed over the years?
Yeah, you know, I started the foundation in 2004 after we won the Olympic gold in Athens. Came home 2 weeks later, I tore my ACL. I was sitting on the couch and my mom was like, you need to get off your behind. You need to do something for somebody else. And she was like, that's the way that I raised you. It's not about you. Don't no pity party. You can rehab. You can get back. Do something for somebody else. So I started Cash for Kids. And, you know, from there, the things that we try to do is provide resources. We try to motivate, educate, elevate young people. We created Safe Haven in McKeesport, Pennsylvania, my hometown, which has a lot of gun violence. I'm dealing with right now 2 young cousins last week that got shot in my hometown. And so we try to provide a place for kids to go and keep them off the street, on the straight path, so that they can have an opportunity to go to college, to play sports if they want to, if they don't, but just to make sure that they see there's a way out.
Oh, I love that. Well, and it's much needed. And I'm so sorry to hear about your family members. I mean, I can't imagine how you guys are dealing with that.
Yeah, you know, it's tough, but that's why we need people. We need advocates. We need nonprofits. We need people to be in the communities. And we need people when they see something to say something. And we have to be stronger as a community together. But I thank you. I appreciate that. They are doing better. Thank you to UPMC in Pittsburgh. It's done an excellent job. And thank you for the care of looking after our family members.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and so you mentioned in your story, you had just come back from the Olympics in Athens. Meg asked a question. She was like, what was it like to earn a gold medal at the Olympics? Because you've been twice, right? Athens and London. What was it like?
It was an amazing experience. And I'll tell you this, because as a young kid, I didn't think about playing for the Olympics. Like, I thought about getting a scholarship to, like, go to college and, okay, then the WNBA happened. But to be on that podium and know that you're only one of 12 that's going to get this medal, one of 12 in the world to have this medal, it's something so special.
I just got chills.
And to hear that anthem, and to think about this, to hear that anthem playing for a bunch of women that come from diverse backgrounds, upbringings, none of that mattered. We were all equal at that time. And that's why I always say, I'm not going to cry when I get on the podium. And both times I cried. Both times.
How could you not? I mean, I think that's the important, I think you're so right in that, like, it sounds like when you were in that moment, you really took the moment in, like, rather than just like being like, hey, whatever, this is cool, take my picture. You were like, wow, like you get to hear the national anthem and stand beside all these women who have accomplished a really, really great feat. I mean, that sounds incredible.
Yeah, no, amazing feeling. Anybody that's ever done it, you respect it so much. And of course, every Olympics, everybody's like hates the USA. So it's almost like the villain has risen to the top, and here we are. It's fun though. It's fun. A lot.
Everybody hates the USA. I mean, you just go out there and compete. That's all.
Right. That's all. We just trying to win some gold. That's all.
Yeah. Okay. We have a really good question on here that I want to make sure we get to. Mr. Oklahoma US 2020 says, what is the age group of kids that Cash for Kids is targeted at?
Yeah, so we target from the age of 9 to 14. And that's kind of been our sweet spot to kind of get them early. It's so funny because recently we've had kids that have started out, introduced the basketball in our program that have gone on to college. We had our first Kaliegh who played at Michigan. He just got drafted in the NFL to the Washington Redskins, so we're super proud of him.
That's awesome.
I just saw, my mom sent me an old picture. Remember when Kaliegh was playing in the basketball leagues, and I knew his dad, and his dad had gotten killed when he was, a few years ago. But he's just really just taken off, and just so that's what we try to do is provide our kids a place to say. We don't charge them any money. I mean, we make sure that they go on cultural trips, whether it's the DC, Chicago. We use sports as kind of a tool to keep them in the game.
Well, and I think, sports teach you some incredible lessons. And I think that is an incredible way to reach people because I remember there's so many things that I reflect on being like an athlete, either in high school or in college. So many stories I still tell about lessons that I learned and how like I reached a level of personal development just because of playing, being an athlete. So I think that's an excellent way to continue to reach people. And I'm so glad that there are people who have like, been successful and like gotten into the draft, like drafted. Oh, that's incredible.
Yeah, no, I think that's what it's all about, is like we just try to introduce kids to sports at a young age. We try to keep them involved. We keep good people around them. We take them on these cultural trips to try to expose them to other places to say like, man, I can go here. A lot of our kids have never been. McKeesport, where I grew up, is literally 15 minutes from Pittsburgh. A lot of our kids before they came into our program had never been to Pittsburgh. So like just introducing those small things so they can see the world in a different capacity is important for us. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. Well, thank you so much, Swin, for being on here. I mean, this is incredible. It's great to be able to hear from you about everything that you're doing in our communities and your own accomplishments, like goals. Definitely a role model for all of us to live up to. So seriously, thank you so much for joining us.
No, I really appreciate you. And thank you to everybody out there. All your comments, we appreciate you. And go Pels.
Yeah. Be safe. Hope to talk to you soon.
Take care. Bye.
Bye. Awesome. Great. Well, thank you guys so much for joining us. This was so fun to be able to talk to Swin about everything that she's accomplished. She seriously is a role model. She's someone that we can all look up to. And I'm glad to hear that she has been so active in our community, speaking out about important topics and going as far as to start her own foundation with the Cash for Kids. So thank you to her for joining us. Check her out on Instagram and show some support. Talk to you guys next live. Be safe.